back to the third example of pernicious racism that Eric Holder gave. He said, and it is true, that a black criminal commits a crime and gets convicted of that crime compared to a white criminal convicted of the same crime will get a longer sentence than the white criminal. And that is true. And he cited the U.S. Sentencing Commission as his basis for saying that. What he didn't tell you is that the same U.S. Sentencing Commission said the reason for the disparity is because of legitimate factors. Most notably, the average black criminal has a longer record of convictions than the average white criminal, and judges properly take that into consideration when they determine a sentence. And by the way, a black criminal defendant got a longer sentence compared to a white criminal defendant when the judge was white or when the judge was black. So this is what Eric Holder said in this groundbreaking speech that was massively covered by the media. These are your three best examples. And of course, nothing in the speech about the epidemic of fatherlessness, nothing in the speech about how at one time in our country a black child was slightly more likely to be born to a mother and father married than a white kid. Nothing in the speech about black on black crime. Nothing in the speech about how the number one cause of preventable death for a young black person is homicide versus the number one cause of preventable death for a young white person is accidents like drownings or car accidents. Nothing about that. Nothing about the abysmal education kids are getting K through 12 in urban America. No, it's all about pernicious racism. And it's disgusting. Obama embraced Black Lives Matter. Loretta Lynch, his second AG, embraced Black Lives Matter. When Freddie Gray died in police custody in 2016, I believe it was, he's the one who hit his head on a van and apparently broke his neck. The Baltimore Police Department had been praised by the Obama administration before this happened as an example of 21st century policing, had been praised. Now they're being investigated for racism. And at the time, the mayor of Baltimore was black. The number one and number two people running the police department were black. The state attorney who brought the charges against the officers was black. 3 of the 6 officers were black. A judge before whom 2 of the officers tried their case without a jury was black and found them, by the way, not guilty. All of city council was Democrat majority black. The county superintendent of schools was black. The city superintendent of school was black. The U.S. AG at the time, Loretta Lynch, was black, as was, the President of the United States. All these people running the system, and you still are yelling and screaming about systemic racism. By the way, after the judge found these 2 cops not guilty, they decided not to charge the others. So all the charges went away. There was an outbreak of violence. And as I've told you before, when there are these high-profile cases where somebody is killed and there's violence thereafter, the police pull back. It's called the Ferguson effect, or more recently, the George Floyd effect, the phenomenon of cops pulling back from proactive policing. And studies have shown, including one by a black Harvard economist named Roland Fryer, that because of this pullback, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are dead who otherwise would not have been dead had the police engaged in proactive policing. And that's just homicides. This war on truth Obama was talking about. I mentioned Crossfire Hurricane. The man that put together the 51 senior intelligence officials on that letter that claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop story had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation was Antony Blinken. Antony Blinken became Joe Biden's Secretary of State. Antony Blinken came out of the Obama administration, had a high-ranking position in the Obama administration. Speaking of the war on fact, remember this exchange between Senator Obama and ABC's Charlie Gibson, when Gibson tried to tell him that historically when you raise capital gains, you get less money, and the senator simply wasn't having it. Number 22.
All right. You have, however, said you would favor an increase in the capital gains tax. As a matter of fact, you said on CNBC, and I quote, "I certainly would not go above what existed under Bill Clinton, which was 28%. It's now 15%. That's almost a doubling if you went to 28%. But actually, Bill Clinton in 1997 signed legislation that dropped the capital gains tax to 20%.
Right.
And George Bush has taken it down to 15%. Right. And in each instance, when the rate dropped, revenues from the tax increased. The government took in more money. And in the 1980s, when the tax was increased to 28%, the revenues went down. So why raise it at all, especially given the fact that 100 million people in this country own stock and would be affected?
Well, Charlie, what I've said is that I would look at raising the capital gains tax for purposes of fairness. But what I also want to make sure is that our tax system is fair and that we are able to finance health care for Americans who currently don't have it, and that we're able to invest in our infrastructure and invest in our schools. And that is irresponsible.
But history shows that when you drop the capital gains tax, the revenues go up.
Well, that might happen, or it might not. It depends on what's happening on Wall Street and how business is going.
That might happen or that might not. But history has shown when you raise the capital gains, you collect less money. Well, that might happen, that might not happen, says a man who does not want a war on fact. And to push Obamacare, he said if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. Turned out it's not true, and he knew it wasn't true when he said it. A left-wing fact-check organization called it the lie of the year. And he lied and said when his mother was dying of cancer in a hospital, she had to fight with her insurance carriers over paying her medical bills. Turned out that was not true either. He said it over and over and over again to show you that if they can jack over a woman whose son went to Harvard Law, imagine what they can do to you. Big lie, dramatically changed this country forever. Every year Obama was in office, Michelle Obama would come out, I think on Women's Day, and say that women make less money than men do for exactly the same work. It is a big, fat lie. Even the own State Department, Labor Department rather, did a study and said when you compare apples to apples, women who've been in the workforce as long as men who have not dropped out in order to have children, same educational level, there is no difference in their wages. It's just a big, fat lie. And you know it is. To quote Walter Williams, my friend, the late Walter Williams, economist, it doesn't pass the smell test. If you're running a business and you can hire women to be just as productive as men and pay them less money, you call every dude in and fire them en masse and hire women. It is a big, fat lie. It is one that is perpetuated time and time and time again by the left because they want to make the argument that women are being shafted in the workforce. It is just not true. And this embrace of what happened in Ferguson, which turned out to be a big lie, continued the narrative that the police were engaging in systemic racism against black people. So what happened the last 2 years of Obama's second term? There were 2 officers in their squad cars in New York, Officers Lou and Ramos. Black guy came up and killed them execution style and told friends or posted on social media that he did it because he believed that the police were engaging in systemic racism against black people. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 3 cops killed execution style by another black man who was motivated by the same lie. And 5 cops killed execution style in Dallas by another black man motivated by the same lie that Obama and Black Lives Matter and Al Sharpton and Eric Holder all pushed. I've told you a million times the police are more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect, rather. They kill more whites every year than they kill black. They kill more unarmed white men every year than blacks. Most people have no blooming idea because of this narrative that Obama and the other Obama acolytes put out and helped to poison this country and making young black men more likely to resist rather than to follow lawful orders. If you're a young black man and you believe you're going to be hurt by the cops because Obama has told you that, why should you obey? Why should you comply? I'm Larry Elder.